History is written in parades and treaties, but beneath its surface lie vaults of silence, sealed files, vanished names, and ruins no map dares to mark. The war may have ended, yet its shadows remain, whispering of weapons never used, of men who vanished without graves, and of truths too dangerous to reveal. Every discovery is a wound reopened, every archive a door best left closed, but some doors, once found, cannot remain locked. On April 25, 1945, 3 weeks before Germany's unconditional surrender, a classified directive left the War Office in Whitehall stamped Top Secret, Operation Eclipse. The stated objective, in sanitized terms, was prevention of German escape and denial of enemy materiel. Yet buried within Appendix C of the planning file, heavily redacted in the surviving photocopies, was an order assigning elements of the Special Air Service, SAS, to secure rumored weapons prototypes hidden in the Bavarian Alps before the Red Army could reach them. The operation was never acknowledged publicly. What exists today are fragments. A bundle of memoranda found in the UK National Archives, misfiled under transportation logistics, 2 heavily blacked out signals intercepts, and the diary of Captain Malcolm R. Spence, an SAS officer attached to the mission. Together, they sketch a story that official history has erased. The surviving documents indicate that on May 2, 1945, Spence's unit, identified as Team Dagger, departed a forward base near Innsbruck. The convoy included 2 jeeps, 1 Bedford QL truck, and 17 men equipped with Bren guns, Sten submachine guns, and demolition charges. They traveled under false American identification to avoid Soviet scrutiny. Their orders: proceed into the Berchtesgaden sector, locate an installation believed to be near Obersalzberg, and remove or destroy any advanced Luftwaffe prototypes. Spence's diary, written in pencil on field stationery, begins with mundane observations: the poor quality of petrol, the exhaustion of his men, the constant risk of ambush from isolated SS diehards. But by May 4th, the tone shifts. He writes, "We intercepted a local farmer who insists the caves above the valley have been sealed by the Germans themselves. He swore men in black uniforms came weeks before, loading trucks at night, said the noise from inside the mountain sounded like thunder under stone." The following entry, dated May 6th, describes the convoy reaching a tunnel mouth near Hintersee. Inside, they found a reinforced steel door with demolition scarring on the frame. Scrawled in chalk across the Entrance, nicht öffnen, Gefahr, do not open, danger. That night, Spence noted the presence of other parties. His exact words: "Movement across the ridge, shapes at dusk, not Wehrmacht stragglers, too well equipped, Americans, Soviets, or something else entirely. Orders say, push forward regardless, we breach tomorrow." No further diary entries survive. The convoy was never officially recorded as lost. A War Office communique from May 12th lists all 17 men as unaccounted for, presumed disbanded. Yet American counterintelligence files tell a different story. A declassified OSS memorandum dated June 3rd references a British detachment failing to report after unauthorized movements east of Berchtesgaden. Attached was a single blurred reconnaissance photograph taken from the air on May 9th, showing scorched earth and the collapsed remains of a tunnel complex near Hintersee. German sources add another layer. In the 1970s, a former Wehrmacht engineer named Karl-Heinz Brunner, interviewed by West German journalists, described being stationed at a test facility in the same area. He recalled blueprints for the Horten Ho 229 jet fighter and mention of a larger apparatus requiring power feeds far beyond ordinary capacity. Brunner refused to elaborate, claiming his colleagues were disappearing even in post-war Germany when they spoke of it. The strangest piece of evidence comes from an intercepted Soviet cable, marked decrypt incomplete in British records. Sent on May 14, 1945, from Smolensk to Moscow, it references British incursion, unknown outcome, priority clearance. The last line, preserved despite heavy code degradation, reads, "Material recovered, condition unstable." What was found in the tunnels of Hintersee remains unclear. Some researchers suggest nothing more than jet prototypes or V-weapons packed for evacuation. Others point to persistent rumors of a high-altitude bomber project capable of reaching New York, known in Allied files as the America Bomber. But none of this explains why every man of Team Dagger vanished, their files struck from regimental rolls, their families told only that they had fallen in the line of duty. For decades, local villagers spoke of explosions echoing through the valley that May, followed by weeks of military cordons forbidding access to the area. Even into the 1960s, hikers reported stumbling across twisted metal buried in scree fields and strange concrete foundations overgrown with moss. The German government quietly sealed the remnants of the site in 1972, citing land stability concerns. In the 1990s, when sections of the National Archives were opened, researchers petitioned for access to Operation Eclipse documents. Many files had been destroyed. Others were withheld under Section 3(4) of the Public Records Act, covering sensitive defense technology. A handful of surviving reports show entire pages blacked out, save for chilling fragments. Unstable, untransmittable, deny knowledge at all costs. Captain Spence's widow, interviewed in 1988, recalled receiving a box with his medals, but no body. She was told he had perished during a training accident. She kept his diary, hidden for decades, until her grandson donated it to the Imperial War Museum. When asked why she never spoke publicly, she answered simply, "They warned me that if I valued the truth less than my life, I would stop asking questions." Today, the road to Hintersee is lined with tourist lodges and hiking trails. Few visitors realize that beneath the soil lies the collapsed skeleton of a tunnel complex once swarming with Allied commandos. Theories remain, but official acknowledgement has never come. Operation Eclipse does not exist in public record. Yet the fragments that survive, scraps of paper, blurred photographs, diary pages smudged with rain, speak of a mission buried not just under rock and rubble, but under the deliberate silence of governments unwilling to admit what was found in those mountains. History teaches us that wars end with signatures on treaties, but their shadows linger far longer. And sometimes, in the gaps between what was recorded and what was erased, we glimpse truths too dangerous for nations to admit, even generations later. Hintersee remains one such place, a wound in the archives of war, covered over but never truly healed. On the night of January 21, 1946, a Soviet dispatch logged a railway convoy moving west to east through the wreckage of Poland. The file, preserved in the State Archive of Smolensk, identifies the train as Transport 24 Tom 7, officially a captured German hospital train reassigned to military use. Its cars bore Red Cross markings and faded Wehrmacht stencils. According to the manifest, it carried 130 wounded prisoners of war from Germany to a facility near Minsk. Yet discrepancies appear immediately. The listed names do not match any German casualty rosters, and the train's cargo weight was nearly double what a passenger convoy of its size should have been. Local testimony complicates the story. A Polish station master in Radom, questioned by Soviet NKVD officers, claimed the train did not appear to carry wounded soldiers. Instead, its carriages were loaded with sealed crates guarded by armed SS officers who spoke in hushed tones. The station master recalled warning signs painted on the crates, skulls, chemical hazard symbols, and an insignia of the Reichsadler stamped above coded numbers. His account was dismissed, and he was later arrested for spreading hostile rumors. His fate remains unknown. By the time the train crossed into Soviet-occupied territory near Brest, no further sightings were recorded. NKVD signals archives include 2 intercepted reports from field commanders noting loss of visibility on cargo convoy 24/7. The first report was dated January 22 at 0340. The second, sent 3 hours later, states simply, "Convoy missing. Recommend silence until clarification." The US Office of Strategic Services, OSS, monitoring Eastern Europe through scattered assets, obtained fragments of these cables. A declassified OSS report from March 1946, marked with the code word Silver Cross, speculates the train carried biological or chemical warfare material of Reich origin. Analysts linked it to Project Nabel, a rumored late-war German program researching weaponized pathogens for battlefield dispersal. Allied scientists had already seized evidence of nerve agents like tabun and sarin, but Project Nabel files were conspicuously absent from known German archives. Train 24/7, some argued, was the missing piece. Reconnaissance photographs from May 1946 show a heavily guarded rail depot outside Smolensk, where analysts identified two carriages bearing faint traces of German insignia beneath hastily repainted Soviet markings. The images are blurred, but the outline of hazard emblems can still be discerned. Within weeks, the depot was dismantled, and all further surveillance showed only empty ground. Soviet denials were absolute. A statement from Moscow, circulated in diplomatic channels in June 1946, declared no such train had ever existed, dismissing Allied inquiries as Western propaganda. Yet privately, US Army Chemical Corps officers briefed the Pentagon on the possibility that the Soviets had acquired materials capable of accelerating their own biological weapons program. The story resurfaced decades later. In 1969, a KGB officer defected to the West under the alias Mikhail R. During questioning in West Berlin, he referenced a ghost train arriving at a sealed facility outside Bryansk in 1946. He described crates unloaded under floodlights, soldiers wearing protective suits, and doctors speaking German. His testimony was partially corroborated by transport records from the Bryansk region, showing an unexplained influx of medical staff that same year. Eyewitness accounts from civilians persist as well. A Polish farmer, interviewed in 1972, recalled seeing freight wagons with Red Cross markings pass through his village, accompanied by trucks carrying Soviet troops. It was quiet, he said. Too quiet. The men didn't smoke, didn't laugh, didn't speak. They looked afraid. His testimony, ignored at the time, fits eerily with the official silence surrounding Train 24/7. What the train carried remains speculation. Some historians argue it was filled with stolen art and treasure, relocated east to keep it from Western investigators. Others believe it held sensitive documents, records of atrocities committed on the Eastern Front, buried by both the Nazis and the Soviets. The more disturbing theory, however, is that the cargo was biological in nature. Plague cultures, anthrax spores, or experimental serums tested in camps like Dachau and Sachsenhausen. Western intelligence files note peculiar outbreaks in the Bryansk region in the late 1940s, cases of unexplained fevers and sudden livestock deaths. The Soviet Ministry of Health attributed these to poor sanitation. But in 1949, US Air Force analysts linked them to the possible release of weaponized pathogens. Nothing was proven. The files remain inconclusive, stamped with the phrase, "Further, evaluation suspended." No trace of Train 24/7 exists today. The railway records end abruptly in January 1946, as though the convoy had never existed. Survivors' families were told nothing. NKVD reports concerning the incident remain classified in Moscow, sealed under national security restrictions until at least 2045, and yet fragments keep surfacing. A torn page from a Soviet logbook found in the Polish archives, bearing the entry 24/7 special transfer, top priority. A blurred photograph of crates marked with a red cross beside the double lightning bolts of the SS. A fragment of cloth with a faded emblem, discovered in a scrapyard outside Bryansk. Each clue points to a chilling possibility, that the war's deadliest secrets did not die with the Reich, but traveled east in the night, hidden under the guise of mercy trains. Train 24/7 became a ghost on the rails of post-war Europe, untraceable, unacknowledged, and erased from every official record. Yet its shadow remains, a reminder that in the aftermath of war, some battles were fought not with guns or tanks, but with silence, secrecy, and fear. The disappearance of Train 24/7 is not simply the story of a missing convoy. It is the story of what nations will bury to protect their future power. And somewhere in the forests and rail lines of Eastern Europe, under decades of earth and denial, lies the truth about a train that should never have reached its destination, if it reached one at all. In October 1961, a NATO intelligence assessment labelled Sigma 47 was quietly circulated among senior command staff in Brussels. Its subject line was stark: Unexplained Aerodynamic Phenomena, Soviet Sector. The file contained transcripts of intercepted Soviet communications, grainy radar charts, and a handful of witness statements from remote stations across the Arctic Circle. Beneath the paperwork lay a whisper carried forward since the war's end. Project Kronos, a rumored Nazi research program into time compression engines seized by the Soviets in 1945. The origins trace back to late-war Germany. In 1944, Allied intelligence noted unusual requisition requests from the Luftwaffe's research arm. Heavy-duty generators, mercury shipments, and reinforced turbine casings sent to facilities near Nordhausen and Peenemünde. Engineers captured. After the war spoke of chronometrische Beschleuniger, devices intended not to manipulate time itself, but to accelerate propulsion systems by compressing fuel burn and velocity profiles. To Western scientists, it sounded like fantasy. To Soviet officers scouring defeated Germany, it was a treasure. By 1946, according to fragments recovered from East German archives, NKVD technical teams had seized crates of documents from a cavern near the Harz Mountains. Among the items listed were cylinder apparatus, mercury conduit pipes, schematics incomplete. These materials were shipped east under guard, their destination noted as Object 7. Western analysts later identified Object 7 as a classified military installation outside Novosibirsk. For years, no further trace appeared. Then, in December 1962, a US radar station at Thule Air Base in Greenland reported tracking an unidentified object moving across the Arctic at speeds exceeding Mach 8, far beyond the capability of any known aircraft. The official explanation blamed atmospheric interference. Yet logs from the station commander, Lieutenant Colonel David Harper, tell a different story. In his report, still partially classified, he wrote, "Target acquired on radar at 22:14. Heading east-northeast. No transponder. Object traveled from Baffin Bay to Kara Sea in under 9 minutes. No aircraft in US or Soviet inventory matches this capability. Phenomenon repeated 3 times over 4 nights." The Pentagon responded with urgency. B-52 patrols were scrambled, reconnaissance satellites retasked, and a joint CIA Air Force working group convened under the codename Black Lantern. Their mandate: determine whether the Soviets had weaponized captured German designs. Documents from the group, declassified in 2007, reveal intense debate. Some analysts dismissed the radar signatures as errors. Others pointed to corroborating evidence: intercepted Soviet communications referencing Phase 2 trials and temporal acceleration anomalies. One CIA officer scrawled in the margins, "Kronos, the Soviet side remains murkier." Files, smuggled out of Moscow by dissident archivists in the 1990s, describe a program housed at a facility designated Polygon Zima. Test engineers reported catastrophic failures, including implosions of test vehicles and unexplained injuries among staff. One chilling account details an incident in 1958 where a prototype compression craft vanished from the testing ground, only to reappear moments later in a frozen field kilometers away. Its pilot dead, his body desiccated and contorted, as though exposed to extreme temporal stress. Despite these disasters, development continued. A Soviet memorandum dated July 1961, addressed to the Ministry of Defense, declared, "Kronos offers the capacity to deliver warheads to any global target in minutes. Western strategic deterrence becomes irrelevant." Western intelligence feared the same. A British Defense Intelligence report from 1963 warned that Soviet possession of acceleration drive vehicles, if confirmed, would negate NATO's entire retaliatory doctrine. Yet, despite intensive surveillance, no physical evidence was ever recovered. What remains are anomalies, blips on radar screens, distorted photographs, and unexplained sonic events recorded over the Arctic Ocean. Between 1962 and 1965, NORAD logged 14 separate instances of fast-mover objects exceeding Mach 6, often on trajectories consistent with Soviet airspace. Each time, the events were classified and buried. Whispers circulated among pilots too. In March 1963, a US Air Force F-102 interceptor, scrambled out of Iceland, reported being overtaken by a luminous craft moving at impossible velocity. The pilot, Captain Ernest Cole, filed a shaken report describing a grey wingless cylinder that blurred and vanished within seconds. He was later reassigned, and his testimony buried in classified appendices. By the late 1960s, Project Kronos seemed to disappear from intelligence chatter. Analysts speculated the Soviets had abandoned it due to insurmountable technical risks, yet some suspected otherwise. A CIA memorandum from 1972 references a possible Kronos derivative observed in Kazakhstan, though no corroboration followed. The fate of the program remains unresolved. The Soviets never admitted to possessing such technology. Western governments quietly closed their files, dismissing the incidents as Cold War paranoia. Yet historians note the striking consistency across scattered sources. Captured German schematics, Soviet test facilities, unexplained Arctic radar contacts. The most haunting document is a torn Soviet lab report, smuggled from Novosibirsk in the 1980s. Its final line reads, "Compression field achieved, duration unstable, material integrity compromised. Recommend containment and immediate classification." If true, it suggests the Soviets may have briefly realized the impossible, compressing time and velocity into a weaponized system. Whether it was abandoned, hidden, or continued under new names is unknown. Today, the term Project Kronos lingers like a ghost in declassified files, a spectre of Cold War competition, born from the ashes of Nazi ambition. The evidence is fragmentary, the truth buried under layers of denial. But the question remains, what exactly streaked across the Arctic skies in the winter of 1962, faster than any aircraft built before or since? In the silence left by missing documents and vanished test pilots, one thing is certain: not all technologies of the Second World War ended with the Reich's defeat. Some survived, carried eastward into the shadows of the Cold War, where their legacy still flickers at the edges of radar screens and in the classified files marked with a single, enigmatic word: Kronos. On February 14, 1947, a memorandum circulated through US Army intelligence in Frankfurt under the heading Special Directive Priority Target Acquisition. It ordered the creation of a covert detachment designated Unit 77 with a mission that never appeared in official records: the capture or elimination of German war criminals who had evaded the record. Unlike conventional war crimes tribunals, this operation was designed to erase men and their work without public trial. One such target was Obersturmführer Heinrich Albrecht, a medical officer attached to the SS's Forschungsgemeinschaft, a secretive research division tied to underground facilities near Nordhausen. Albrecht's name never appeared in Nuremberg proceedings, yet scattered testimonies from liberated prisoners described the doctor beneath the mountain, a man overseeing experiments on high-altitude endurance, chemical injections, and forced hypothermia trials. Declassified fragments show that Unit 77 was assembled from military police, intelligence officers, and former OSS operatives. Their commander, Captain James L. Morton, wrote in his briefing notes, "Target has been erased from all Axis surrender manifests. Assume protection networks. Objective: secure and silence." The trail began in Frankfurt, where captured SS couriers carried coded correspondence mentioning A, cross-referenced with surviving Nordhausen files, Analysts concluded Albrecht had fled into the Harz Mountains, shielded by a ring of ex-SS engineers. Unit 77 was deployed on March 4, 1947. They carried Thompson submachine guns, demolition charges, and orders authorizing lethal force without restriction. Reports cease abruptly thereafter. The last intact document is a field message dated March 9th, sent from a safe house near Ilsenburg. Subject confirmed in mountain sector. Moving to intercept at dusk. Expect contact. The transmission cut mid-sentence. No further messages came. 3 weeks later, an investigation team dispatched to the Harz region found the safe house burned, its walls blackened, its papers reduced to ash. A local forester recalled seeing armed men moving through the woods at night, followed days later by heavy trucks under tarpaulins heading toward Nordhausen. None bore American markings. The official explanation, preserved in Army files, lists Unit 77 as disbanded due to operational compromise. Families of the men were told only that their loved ones had perished in a training accident. Medals and folded flags were delivered in silence. Yet fragments remained. In 1952, a misplaced file at Fort Meade revealed a memorandum stamped secret. Albrecht unaccounted, possible exfiltration, witnesses eliminated. The phrasing implied not a failed mission, but one deliberately buried. Another document, recovered decades later from the Bundesarchiv in Koblenz, contains a chilling annotation beside Albrecht's name, expunged 1947. Do not pursue. Speculation abounds on what happened in those mountains. Some believe Unit 77 cornered Albrecht, only to be ambushed by remnants of his network. Others argue the unit succeeded, but their discovery, perhaps of facilities or research too volatile to expose, sealed their fate. Theories persist of American intelligence absorbing Albrecht under programs like Operation Paperclip, his crimes scrubbed in exchange for expertise. Local accounts deepen the mystery. Villagers in Ilsenburg recall sealed tunnels dynamited shut in 1947, guarded for weeks by soldiers who spoke neither German nor Russian. A priest from the region, writing in his parish diary, noted, "Strangers came in trucks. They sealed the caves. The smell of fire and chemicals carried on the wind for days." By the 1960s, the name Albrecht had vanished entirely from intelligence registers. Researchers combing through war crimes archives found no mention, no trial, not even a birth. Record traceable in Berlin. It was as if he had never existed. Unit 77, too, was erased, its men struck from rolls, its files marked destroyed. Only in the late 1980s, when portions of US Army intelligence records were declassified, did hints resurface. A heavily redacted, summary titled Lessons Learned, Special Detachment 77, lists a single line under outcomes. Operational silence achieved. No other details follow. The families who pressed for answers met walls of denial. Letters from widows to Congress went unanswered. A handful of veterans whispered that Unit 77 had been fed to the fire, sacrificed not in battle, but in bureaucratic cover. They found something they weren't supposed to, one retired officer told a journalist in 1978. After that, it was easier to erase them all. The truth of Unit 77's disappearance remains locked in sealed vaults. Whether Albrecht was killed, recruited, or escaped is unknown. What endures are fragments, burned houses in the Harz, erased names in archives, and sealed tunnels that may still hold the remnants of what he left behind. History records the great battles of the Second World War in detail, but its shadows are filled with silences. Unit 77 belonged to those shadows, men sent to erase a war criminal, only to be erased themselves. Their story is not listed among campaigns or decorations. It lingers instead in the empty spaces of files, in the families who never received a body, and in the suspicion that their disappearance was not failure, but design. The erasure of Unit 77 stands as a reminder that some truths were not lost by accident. They were buried, sealed away with the same deliberate force as the tunnels. in the Harz Mountains, where fire and silence swallowed the last trace of a mission that never officially existed. On the night of May 17, 1981, a farmer ploughing a field outside Orléans struck metal just beneath the soil. Expecting to uncover rusted equipment from the German occupation, he instead revealed a reinforced concrete shaft capped with steel plating. Within hours, the gendarmerie sealed the site, and within days, French military engineers in unmarked trucks swarmed the area. What they uncovered remains one of the most controversial post-war discoveries in Europe. Sealed bunkers bearing Wehrmacht insignia, untouched since 1944. Initial excavation revealed 3 chambers accessible through corroded blast doors. Inside lay rows of wooden crates, stacked neatly and stenciled with faded markings. Here, OKH, and codes beginning with Sturmlicht and V7A. The crates were banded in steel, many bearing painted warnings. Nicht öffnen, Hochspannung. Local gendarmes who first entered the site described a humming sound emanating from several sealed containers. Their reports, filed on May 18th, were classified immediately. Rumors spread quickly among villagers. Witnesses claimed to have seen soldiers unloading not just crates, but cylindrical glass tanks glowing faintly blue, even after decades underground. Others swore they saw masked men, speaking English, not French, arrive the following night. By morning, the perimeter was doubled, press access forbidden, and locals warned under penalty of law to remain silent. Officially, the Ministry of Defense declared the find unexploded ordnance and outdated electrical equipment. Yet internal memoranda, leaked in 1999 by a former archivist, tell a darker story. A report to the Chief of Staff on May 21st described the recovered materials as experimental propulsion systems, linked to a rumoured German development project, the Vergeltungswaffe 7, V7. Attached diagrams depict disc-shaped airframes powered by high-voltage turbines and liquid metal conduits. One line, underlined in red ink, reads, "Possible prototype for high-altitude test vehicle, status incomplete." The most striking evidence comes from a single inventory log, unsigned but dated May 22nd. It lists 12 units, V7A chamber assemblies, 4 units, Sturmlicht power cells, unstable, and biological storage canisters, status, unknown. The last entry is crossed out with thick black pen. No explanation accompanies it. Journalists who attempted to investigate faced intimidation. That summer, a reporter from Le Monde pursuing the story vanished for 3 weeks, returning with no memory of where he had been. His notes were destroyed. When pressed, the government repeated the cover story, nothing but scrap metal. Yet rumours of a firefight on the second night persist. Villagers recalled hearing gunshots near the site and seeing smoke drift across the fields. Some insist masked commandos, not gendarmes, fought that night. Men carrying NATO standard weapons and equipment. French records remain silent on what happened afterward. The bunkers were resealed under concrete, and within a year the farmland was re-sown. But in 1985, US intelligence reports intercepted by a Senate Oversight Committee referenced Orléans recoveries. One line, heavily redacted, notes, transfer, successful, systems shipped to Nevada site under joint custody. If true, it suggests the find never remained in French hands. Instead, the materials were quietly moved across the Atlantic, absorbed into the black budgets of Cold War research. Independent researchers point to similarities between the Orléans descriptions and later American test projects, particularly experimental craft sighted in Nevada during the 1980s. Survivors of the gendarmerie detachment that first entered the bunkers have offered conflicting accounts. One sergeant, interviewed in 1992, described crates that shook as if something inside was alive. Another spoke of a humming box that burned cold to the touch. Both men claimed their health deteriorated within years, one dying of leukemia at 43, the other of neurological illness. No connection was admitted by the ministry. Official silence has only deepened the mystery. Requests for declassification under French archival law have been denied, with files sealed until at least 2085. Researchers attempting to trace requisition orders for the materials found only gaps, missing ledgers, erased indexes, entire boxes of documents marked intruvable. The story lingers in fragments, whispered testimonies, smuggled memoranda, and the strange, persistent accounts of villagers who saw trucks rumbling through the night in 1981, carrying away the last secrets of the Wehrmacht's hidden projects. If the crates indeed contained remnants of V7 technology, they would represent one of the most significant finds of post-war Europe, proof that the Reich's late-war desperation produced machines far stranger than history admits. If, as some allege, biological canisters were among the contents, the implications are darker still. That decades after the war, untested weapons sat buried in French soil, waiting to be unearthed. No photographs of the Orléans bunkers have ever surfaced publicly. No surviving crates have been shown to the press. What remains are stories of glowing cylinders, unmarked commandos, and files stamped secret defense. And yet, silence itself becomes a kind of evidence. For if the Orléans discovery was merely scrap metal, as Paris claimed, why was it met with armed cordons, classified memoranda, and rumors of transatlantic transfers? The farmland today appears ordinary, rows of wheat swaying in the breeze. But beneath the soil lies the sealed concrete scar of a bunker system, built by an army that lost its war, yet left behind legacies too dangerous to discard. The Orléans. Seizure reminds us that the Second World War did not end cleanly in 1945. It left buried chambers, sealed crates, and questions governments still refuse to answer. The past is never buried. It waits in tunnels, in crates stamped with warnings, in the ashes of missions erased from memory. Nations trade silence for power. Families forfeit answers for flags, and the dead are conscripted into secrecy long after their war is over. What remains are fragments, whispers, and scars, reminders that some truths are not forgotten but hidden, held down like a body underwater until the weight of history forces them back to the surface.